We are at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 10
Love it, love
o'clock
it.
Pacific Standard Time. I want to officially welcome all the students who have come here to learn all about getting an awesome job in digital marketing. Also to learn about, a story, Richard's story of inspiration, ideas. These special sessions are brought to you by Jelly Academy, and also the fine folks at Search Kings have also been helping us make these events happen. So if you're looking to get a job in digital ads management, Search Kings currently, as of today, are looking for 7 people at this very moment for people that to manage their digital ads for brands right across North America. Uh, Other resources to check out, we're going to be talking about them all throughout the show. We're going to be putting links in the show notes. So if you are watching this post live, be sure to check out the notes. If you're watching it live, we'll be sending out an email to everyone with all of the show notes as well. So without further ado, Richard, welcome to the live lecture series. Uh, Live with
Hello.
you. Yeah, yeah.
Thank
Marketing
you.
stars,
Thank you.
marketing stars.
Thank you for having me. I'm such
Yes.
a great company.
So we met many years ago because we were in a hotel green room, our conference center green room,
Yeah.
where we were shooting a Marketing News Canada episode. And you were then at the time working for a influencer management company. So maybe kind of catch me up about your origin story of your journey from like high school to then, and then let's
Yeah.
talk about from then to where you are now.
Yeah. Way back high school then. So high school, if we go back there, pre-social media, pre all those type of things like that. Um, Great mug, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I originally thought I was going to become like an engineer. Growing up, my dad was an engineer, kind of like always trained me, sent me to like engineering camps and like learned how to build rockets and internal combustion engines and stuff like that on my
Was it a
spare time.
mechanical engineer
Yeah,
or?
mechanical. He was
Yeah.
a mechanical,
Nice.
and U of T, which is where he grew up, had like a tech camp for kids,
Nice.
and so I
Awesome.
I kind of always went there, took all the AP physics and chemistries and maths and all that stuff like that. Um, but then I realized didn't have a passion for it. I happened to like get involved in a lot of different type of clubs. One of the clubs that really stood out to me was a group called DECA, so business case competitions, and I found that I loved it. And like, there's just something around like just seeing things and being able to transform that. And it really switched my opinion around thinking about what I wanted to specialize in. So I decided I wanted to go into business. Um, so went in that. I went to Western, and so I went to the HBA program. Graduated from there, and when I went through there, I had zero idea of where I wanted to go. Most people who go to like business schools like that will typically go into like finance or accounting, or they'll go into one of those other type of areas. Like consulting was another big area, and marketing wasn't one of those big areas for our group to go into. What I loved about it was just the opportunity that all the things you see in shopping, you get to be able to go and see. And to like, that's what you get to transform. And so my first internship that I got to be on was at Procter and Gamble, managing CoverGirl Cosmetics, and got to work on some really cool projects and had know nothing about cosmetics, but they taught you and trained you a lot of the basics about marketing and managing an overall brand. From
Okay,
there,
okay. Quick
yeah,
question. Jump into there. How did you go and get chosen as that person to get that internship? Like, what was that
yeah.
process like?
So my process when I was a student within there, they had some on-campus recruiting.
Mhm.
So a lot of those job boards were on there.
Yeah.
They had recruited and tried to recruit people right from like during kind of the on-campus recruiting. I had no idea what Procter and Gamble was at the time, but I had talked and spoken to a lot of other people. And I had one person who was on a Dragon Boat team with me, and she said like, "Hey, I did my summer here. It's a pretty cool company. You Duracell batteries and like laundry detergent,
Yeah.
and
What do they not own?
I don't
P&G.
know. They're like the biggest advertiser in the world, but like
Yeah.
the actual brands themselves are just like endless.
And they have
And
an HQ in Toronto. Is that correct? Like a
yeah,
physical big building with,
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah. And so I went there, went through the application. Like they make you write some tests, they do the on-campus interviews, then at the final rounds, they don't fly you, they give you a train ticket to go take the train over to their area, and then like you go and interview there. And
Wow.
so it's a bit of a whirlwind. but really crazy experience that way. But ended up landing there, and I really enjoyed my time. But
And was that the brass ring for your peers at the time? Was P&G like, oh, you got to get like that's the pinnacle of internships?
It wasn't necessarily the top one. I would say the
Okay.
top ones back then was like the Goldman Sachs or
Yep.
the McKinsey like
Yep.
internship, because those are
Yes.
the traditional business
Yep.
school type of roles that you end up
Yep.
taking on.
Yep.
And I was one of the few people that was like, I don't know if I love that area. I kind of want to be able to. And when we started sharing our summers, I had like a picture of a Miley Cyrus cardboard cutout right next to my desk because we were working on, one of her new lip gloss
Yep.
launches, or I started to work on like next top model, and like that's the
Wow.
part for marketing, which was like really cool. And
Yeah.
so that's the element where I think for a lot of people who are still trying to figure out what they're trying to do, choose something that's interesting to you. Choose something that you really want to do. And I remember the summers before that, I like wanted to work at one of those like street teams, like
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Hand out swag
Mosaic.
or whatever.
Yeah, I was just like, I thought
Mosaic.
those
Yes. Yeah.
Mosaic was like one of the ones I would like really want to work for.
Yeah.
But I remember my parents were like, no, you're not working in those type of roles. And I was like, why not? And I was
Yeah.
like, well, it's not steady
Yeah.
hours. You're going to be out in the sun.
Yeah.
Like, we can help you like maybe apply to some of the staple classic jobs. So I got like a job at a bank doing like document processing, and like I don't know about everybody else, but like that wasn't my dream job. And so that was an opportunity where I would just recommend people like whatever you're interested in, whatever your passions are. One, the world is changing so much. Follow whatever you're really excited and passionate about, and chase that. Um, I know there's a long story, and I made a bunch
No.
of different
No.
jumps, but like,
Yeah. And you learn what you don't want, right? Is that part
yeah,
of the process?
absolutely,
And would you spend 4 months at P&G? Was it a paid
yeah,
or unpaid
paid,
process? Paid.
paid.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, big fan. I don't recommend. I have mixed feelings around unpaid, where I just generally I think most people should be paid for the
I
work that
don't
they
think
end up
you
doing.
can legally do it anymore in Canada by
Okay, good.
law. I think it's if it's called an internship or a co-op, you have to pay, and especially co-ops, there's a ton of funding. But if
Yeah,
it's a practicum, like wording wise,
yeah.
but because everywhere I've Googled and looked, and is that there's no more, you can't legally not pay an intern.
Okay, good.
And again, my Google searching could be
Yeah,
wrong, but I know practicums are more involved with schooling, and you have
yeah,
to fill out a bunch of forms. And but yeah.
yeah. If anyone's here looking beyond Canada, make sure you get paid as well.
Yeah. Yes. Come on. There you go.
Yeah. Um, Anyways, after graduation, I was so heavily involved in student government and
Yeah.
student like the student life. I actually spent 3 years after graduation in university admissions and recruiting.
Okay. Nice.
Absolutely love that experience. Like highly recommended. It was
Yeah.
like really just incredible. But then I wanted to come back into the pure marketing side, and so I joined Johnson and Johnson. I was
Nice.
at J&J as a brand manager on Band-Aid, Visine, and First Aid. Uh, and at that point, I like knew that I wanted to go more in the digital. This is still pre-digital realm itself,
Yeah.
and so I thought of what's the main company that I can learn anything digital from. So I applied to Google.
Yeah.
And so I joined Google's marketing team and had like an absolute wonderful time on their APMM, so their associate program product marketing manager role program. And you got to work with some incredible people all around the world around some of Google's different type of products. From there, I wanted to jump in the startup world, and that's I joined one startup called 500px, 500 pixels. Think of it like Instagram specifically for like photographers and like high res and high quality and stuff like that. And
Like
then
Flickr, was Flickr around back then?
Flickr, yeah, it
It
was
was
a
like the
Flickr
Flickr.
competitor.
Nice, nice. Well, and
Yeah,
if it wasn't for Flickr, we wouldn't have Slack. So
yeah,
thank you, Stuart Butterfield, for
exactly.
making that. A Vancouver native, actually.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah.
500px was Toronto, so it's
Okay, nice.
the
Yeah.
west. Yeah, there we go. And then I joined Hashtag Paid, which is where you and I met.
Yes, yes.
And then after that, a lot of my entire career was in marketing, and I knew that at that point. Just reflecting on careers and growth and
Yeah,
development, I knew that for my next stage, I wanted to really tackle sales and really prove that I can do it really well, because marketing and sales works so much in tandem.
yeah,
And I thought about which is the best place for me to be able to learn and craft these skills while still leveraging a lot of the background that I have. And that's what naturally led me to LinkedIn. LinkedIn has an incredible world-class, organization and some great leaders who work there. And was a huge user and used the products a ton in the past. And so now what I get to do is I work with different type of companies and marketing teams to advise them on how to best leverage LinkedIn for how to grow their businesses. And so that's where I've been for the past 3 years. And it's been fantastic. Right now, in my current tour of duty, I'm working with US based startups
Yep.
and helping them to scale and go on their go to market strategies. But absolutely enjoyed this ride, incredible stuff, and get to hang out with people like you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, if you were to give advice to a student right now and they're trying to decide, do I want to go brand side and work for a brand, or do I want to maybe consider agency side, like working at an agency, or do I want to consider working for, I guess, a software company like
Yeah.
LinkedIn or Google? What would maybe be kind of the distinguishing factors of those three job roles?
Yeah. So I'll admit I haven't had agency experience. So my agency side, I'm going to turn to you to
Oh,
speak
sure,
on the
sure.
agency side.
I'll try.
But my sense of between all of those, if you just think about the broad dynamics of how things end up operating,
Yeah.
the brand of the client side is primarily the main decision maker
Okay.
who decides a lot of those areas. That's ultimately like you're making decisions on behalf of the business, be it
Yeah.
the CoverGirl Cosmetics brand, or be it on any of these other areas, you're advising based on all the information you hear,
Yeah.
what you work with. Now, your agencies are like your go to experts itself. And when you're having a great relationship, you should trust them because they're a subject matter expert in whichever area that they work in. And so you kind of turn to your agencies to become your experts and your advisors in that area. Now, sometimes, especially in the world of digital marketing, the agencies are great experts of telling you a lot of the other areas, but sometimes you need deep expertise in a specific type of vertical, be it, activating your Google ideas and all the insights that Google can be able to provide for you. For myself at LinkedIn, we have a whole bunch of insight tools that we can have on our backend to be able to help better inform like where they should take their strategies. And so that's where the tech platforms will kind of take another type of form and be able to be an overall advice. But the best case scenario is you're all three of you are working together. I will put in this part just as a plug within here. If anyone's interested in like trying to understand the different type of dynamics and maybe they're undecided of which areas to go into, there's a really great program for Canadians called M2T Collective, M number two T collective.com. And it's a rotational program that internship that people can end up participating in. And they get to rotate between client side, Starbucks, I think is the one that's signed up, agency. So Starcom's on there. You go to get a startup experience at EQ Works and then a big tech company like LinkedIn that they get to work with. And so you do a rotational program and you get to have an experience and tackle projects across every single area and work with each of those teams.
Amazing. That is amazing. Now, someone was asking the question,
Yeah.
did you have to physically move for these roles or were they all kind of Toronto based?
So for all of my roles, they've been Toronto based.
Yeah.
The caveats that I will have on there is most of these roles were pre-pandemic, and so therefore we didn't virtual work wasn't
Yeah.
as prevalent.
Yeah.
For some of the roles, as the more senior that I ended up getting,
Yeah.
the more that you have to just start to manage other groups. So, for
Yeah.
example, in some of the startup areas, I would be managing people in the US in our New York office. So I'd be
Okay.
flying down to New York a lot. When I was at Google, a lot of the people who are on the product teams and working in different ways are based either in either the New York office or San Francisco or other type of groups like that. And so sometimes
Yeah.
you would end up traveling for some of these different type of areas. I think the world has like significantly changed from there. And I think the opportunity of working remotely or developing your careers in other type of ways has
Yeah.
really started to expand our possibilities. And I encourage all the Canadians that are listening in that like don't just think about Canadian roles. Start to punch above our weight class
Yeah.
and start to chase other type of roles that are beyond our areas because that's an opportunity that we can be able to pursue.
It's awesome. And speaking of which, the LinkedIn profile. Maybe
Yeah,
tell us about, I'm sure people are aware of it, know of it, have maybe been suggested to get one going, but what are maybe some features within the tool that employers are looking at right now and
absolutely.
what's important to update on their
Yeah.
profile?
So if anyone's not on LinkedIn, join LinkedIn. It's free. It's great. There's, I think, over 800 million professionals who are all on LinkedIn. So absolutely great. And it's especially a great way to be able to stay on top of your overall industry. It's
Yeah.
evolved well beyond the original days of where you post your resume online. And it's really become where you can professionally show up to work. So I have a couple tips that I want to share with people in terms of like preparing your profile. One, if you ever just Google rock your profile,
Yep.
create kind of checklist of areas that you can be able to go through. But here are some of the key trends that we've started to see.
Yeah.
Number one, make sure you have a professional photo
Okay.
on your profile. If you compare profiles that don't have a professional photo or a photo in period and people who have a professional photo, 14 times more views if you have a photo.
Wow.
And the other part as well, check to make sure your privacy settings are set so that people who aren't connected to you can still see your profile.
Okay. Okay.
So,
That's great.
number one, make sure you have a photo up on there because people like to be able to connect with people and make sure there's a familiar face.
Yeah. Okay.
Two, write an attention grabbing headline.
Yes.
So, if you think about that headline that you end up having beyond there, oftentimes people put like whichever current role they have, like student
Yeah.
at current place. My recommendation, no, talk about your dreams. What are you
Mm.
passionate about? What are the things that you value? Or what are the things that you aspire to become?
Yeah.
Those tell you much more about the type of professional that you want to become. And so I strongly recommend people explore like a really attention grabbing headline that way.
Okay.
Next part, compelling summary. And so that summary section right below that, if you include 40 words or more, is usually kind of that natural sweet spot. Include a lot of the keywords that you have. So, for example, if you're in digital marketing,
Yeah.
have you had experience on developing SEO content? Are you a social media manager for your clubs or different type of volunteer areas? Have you managed ad campaigns, and maybe that's something area that you're pursuing roles where you'll have to do some more ads management. A lot of these also other additional areas can be free certifications that you can train yourselves in as a student right now for free, be able to have those certifications so that you can prove that you're qualified. It helps differentiate you from the overall market. But focus on those keywords, not necessarily those buzzwords, and focus on any of those career accomplishments itself that you can go through. Um, have a whole bunch more, but like a couple other areas, like any of the work experience in the past, like especially if you think about just your classic careers page, think about those as like if you can pull out all the past positions that you've created, things that you're proud of, things that you've accomplished, you have 12 times more likely to be viewed by any recruiters if you have more than one position
Yeah.
listed out on
Yeah.
there.
And tell me about like some of the classes you can take right now. I know there's an incredible U of A instructor. I think she teaches at University of Lethbridge as well, where she teaches a SEO course through LinkedIn, which when you complete it, there's actually like the badges. And tell me about the kind of the badge integration and kind of the micro credentials you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the really exciting parts that we've seen from just the entire job market as well over the past several years is moving away from like specific degrees and credentials and experiences that way
Yeah.
to more towards skills. And skills are a great way to be able to demonstrate. And when you're taking some of these courses through LinkedIn Learning or taking some of the certification type of badges or any of these other type of areas, say you're pursuing something at University of Lethbridge
Yeah.
and going through that course, when they send you that digital certificate that you can connect to your LinkedIn profile, that's a identifying that you have a skill specifically in SEO or any of these other type of areas so that you can be able to signal to the overall job market that you have proven that you have these different type of skills within your tool belt.
That is awesome. And why is that important? Like, why should we bother to get skills and credentials and certifications on our LinkedIn? What does that matter today?
Yeah. So because people are moving away from rather than the traditional old school way of saying you have to have, you know, 10 plus years of social media experience,
Yeah.
which, for a lot of these areas, social media hasn't been around for, oftentimes more than 10 plus years. So it's less about the actual years that you put in, but it's more about what you put into those years. And when you're thinking about that particular element, that's where the certifications, that's where proving your abilities, proving that you just have those badges and those skills is like just really the start of this. If you want to take it to the next level, share your portfolio online, link to some of the other areas that you end up doing. If anyone wants to take a peek into my profile,
Yeah.
I'm super proud of like every time I got an ad age or ad week, different type of mention for some of the research that we ended up doing from our startup area. That's my portfolio of work. And the op-eds that I would have when I'm putting something into Forbes and gets published, these are the opportunities that you can to really showcase your expertise in those different type of areas. And so strongly recommend thinking about using your profile as your highlight reel.
That's awesome. That is amazing. So, give me this example, maybe as far as someone, they've got their LinkedIn profile gone up, they've got it rocking, they're going to start applying for places. What's your kind of maybe advice for when you start applying for jobs and you start, getting into the interview world? What's the first maybe application advice you'd give people?
Yeah. So the first application advice I recommend is do your research. I think if you're reflecting on and asking any hiring managers about like what differentiates all the other type of people who go through it, doing your research before the application so you can talk to the cover letter. What are you excited about? What attracts you to this particular type of company? Mention specific type of areas. Even if you want to think about the sales process of this, you know, see if you want to drop a message to whoever's posting about hiring. I think the hiring market has changed so much that a lot of the people who are actually hiring aren't just a faceless application down a job board, but they're posting it on their LinkedIn profiles and asking people like, "Hey, I'm looking for, people to fill these following type of roles. Here's what's exciting about that." Engage, comment, react to those different type of areas. Be a person. Ultimately, like if you're successful in this role, this is somebody you're going to be working with every single day. And so they want to know who that person is behind the application and all of those other groups. So reach out, engage, do your research, understand what the company's working on, what are the challenges that they're currently going through. And so I think there's a ton of information that's on LinkedIn that you can be able to research that I would recommend just trying to uncover by spending a little bit of time.
That's awesome. And then as far as like once you've got maybe the interview, what's some of your best interview advice? Kind of like learn from your mistakes. Where have you done well, or when you've interviewed someone, what have they done well?
Yeah. One of the areas that I love is just if you are good at preparation, and whether someone's mentioned, one of the pieces that somebody might have published or thought-provoking piece that people might engage with. I'm seeing a lot of hiring managers and myself included posting things where this is the challenge that I'm having, or this is, one of the exciting things that we're working on. And if you bring those up in the interview to show that you've actually done your research, that tells me or anybody else who's going to be hiring that this person's like going to go beyond just the normal call of duty and actually do some research, actually put in the grunt work and being proactive. And people love that. The second part I'd also recommend is thinking and embracing a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And so, especially if you're in an early stage of your career, but frankly, any time of your career, we all are learning and all of us are progressing in our careers. And I think when you can embrace and letting people know that these are things that you don't know, these are things that you're excited to grow in, these are things that you're practicing. And especially when somebody like an interviewer gives you feedback, embrace that feedback, treat that as an overall lesson and see how you can react. Half the time they're doing this, they're also testing your coachability and making sure that they're coachable. And this is something that you can be able to continue to grow with their overall team itself.
That's amazing. And then for you, like when you're in a role, like I know that you've been in multiple roles, like how do you know when it's time to maybe try something new, or why should someone maybe kind of try different experiences? What does that look like for someone's kind of, kind of career development?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm thinking about those career moves and whether it's my own career or people that I'm mentoring, one of the factors and attributes that I'm always thinking about is what are you learning?
Hmm.
So are you continuing to be challenged? Are you continuing to learn in those other type of ways? And especially in those early stages of your career, if you're not continuing to progress, if you're not being challenged and you're not discovering something absolutely brand new, it's probably time for you to think about like what those
Yeah.
next plays, as we'll typically call it at LinkedIn, is. And when you think about your next play, that can be something externally and looking
Yep.
for another company and new industry and new exposure. But oftentimes you can find that next play within the company. And I think the people that I've seen become really successful are people who can take a look because they work at those companies, understand where's the company going, where's my interest going? And if I can find a way to align my own personal career growth trajectory
Yep.
aligned to the company, well, the company is going to become way easier to be sold on that because you know the business. They don't want to have to onboard somebody new. They know that they can bring in somebody who can already operate within those existing systems and can grow with those companies itself. And so that's one where for myself, I transitioned from being on the Canadian part of our business over to the US side because that's challenging for me. there's also different elements that we're working on, but also get to play a different type of role within the teams that I end up working with. And so that's something that I've absolutely enjoyed and really loved.
That is awesome. That's awesome. And then if you could go back to yourself, like you're in university right now, you're in your like first, second, third, fourth year. What's some advice that you'd like, man, if you could sit down with your fourth year self or third year self, what would you say? What do you wish you would someone had come, beside you and said?
Stop taking things so seriously.
Okay.
I think there's a ton of pressure, and I imagine that a lot of the people who are watching or listening in on being proactive of, you know, Jelly Academy type of material, would be people who are going to become, very intense and rigorous about this and putting a lot of pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that when you can just one relax a little bit, maybe you don't get that brass ring top internship that you ultimately wanted, but frankly, if you think about this on the grand scheme of things, how many of us peak when we're 20 in our early 20s,
Yeah.
or anything less like that, or in our teenage years? Ideally, we continue to grow. And so I think when you can flex on this and think about, okay, well, shoot your shot, try your best for whichever roles that you're dreaming about.
Yeah.
But if you don't necessarily get this, think about the other roles that are adjacent that you can become, you can gain those skills. Be open to so much amount of feedback. Continue to grow your career and continue to think about how can I better myself so that I can chase those roles in the long run. When I reflect on to like even all the people who I graduated with, it really didn't matter where you fell within your overall graduating year. It really doesn't matter who got that dream internship versus not. Like fast forward, a decade or even shorter than that, people are going to transition roles. People are going to move roles, and I think when you can just pivot and adapt to
Yeah.
what you're dealt with and be able to just relax, calm down, think about what you actually want to get out of your next roles, you're a lot more successful in playing the long game itself.
That was awesome. And those that are maybe going into like agency side or brand side and they want to talk to them about, hey, here's what LinkedIn can do these days. Maybe what are some of like the cool features that we may not know that LinkedIn can do for a brand, advertising wise, growth wise?
Yeah. So when you're thinking about from like LinkedIn from an advertising and a company, if you're a company and you're a startup and you're growing and scaling up, there's so many possibilities itself if you're thinking about activating from just even your company page. There's a whole bunch of tools and groups for you to continue to post and build a community and a professional community and framing it up so that you're you know either connecting with people who are potential customers, but people who you might potentially hire. There's a whole elements on that side. But
Okay.
if you're thinking about now scaling it out to advertising, well, now there's a whole element where you can reach any different type of professional. You're trying to sell into, Fortune 1000 companies and trying to find, marketing directors of these certain areas. Well, because through the power of LinkedIn, you're able to actually get to those in front of those right type of decision makers. And so that's part of the magic and part of the secret sauce that I get to chat and build strategies with a lot of the companies that I work with.
That is awesome. And has it been fun? Like, is it, you're part of the Microsoft family. Do you end up like seeing your cousins or uncles or aunts around? Like, or I don't know, how do you see each other, the different arms of Microsoft?
I like Microsoft and LinkedIn, they're obviously LinkedIn's part of the overall Microsoft family,
Yeah.
but they've kind of left LinkedIn as a company on its own itself.
Okay. Okay.
I do know a few people who are on the Microsoft team, and we've collaborated on a few things here and there. But for the most part, they kind of treat us like separate ships, all
Okay.
within the same Navy Armada itself.
Yes.
But
Yes. Yes. Okay.
the perks that we get is like I get a Game Pass login as part of my employee perks, and with this Activision Blizzard type of areas, I know what I get to spend some of my weekends on a snow day
Yeah.
doing.
Crushing
Um,
candy,
you bet.
or maybe some of the other games that are.
Yeah.
I guess I love that. That's awesome. That's
So
awesome, man.
yeah.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Anything else, Richard, that you want to leave with students as advice or encouragement to them today?
Yeah, I'd recommend with any of the students here thinking about this, again, focus on those skills that you want to be able to develop rather than those key roles. There's a ton of great skills available. And one of the areas that I want to drop within here is LinkedIn has a free LinkedIn learning kind of learning pathway for job seekers. And
Okay.
so if you're in that particular mode, sign up to LinkedIn Learning, and there's a whole bunch of free tools that you can end up taking for you to develop the skills that you want to be able to get to. You and I remarked on this before. I think Canadians have an incredible opportunity ahead of us to be able to go after this. This pandemic, one of the silver linings within this entire area is a lot of the workplaces are moving towards a remote friendly type of environment. And so think beyond our borders, think about all the impacts that we can end up making. In a lot of the roles of groups, both internally here at LinkedIn, but also from a lot of my peers that I've chatted with, we have an incredible opportunity to take on roles like what I've done and go beyond just managing a Canadian type of book of business. So I'd say get excited. Digital marketing is such an incredible place to be. And I'm glad you're in great hands with people like yourself to advise people.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining today, both live and those that are watching later. This has been Digital Marketing with the Stars live lecture series. Richard Wong from LinkedIn, amongst many other things, many other experiences. Uh, Jury member for the Canadian Marketing Hall of Fame, the Jelly Academy Upcoming Scholarship Award. If you have seen that scholarship application, again, Richard will be one of the jury members as well, along with Kayla from Facebook and other incredible people from across this great country who want to see great students get support. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on the live lecture series. Join us next month when we have
So yeah, it's all of us who are managing random brands in the grocery aisle, just moving on to other things.